Welcome back to the Word Room. I'm so glad you're here. We are going through all the chapters of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation with a summary of what happens, some key takeaways, and finding out what it tells us about God. And you don't want to miss this episode. We are on Genesis chapter 7, which is the flood of Noah, the great flood. And this tells us some key things about who God is. Let's go. All right, let's jump right into our Genesis chapter 7 summary. So some very important things happen here. First, 7 days before the actual rain begins for the flood, Noah and his family go into the ark with 7 of every clean animal and 2 of every unclean animal. Now we saw in chapter 6 that it was with 2 of every animal. But more specifically, chapter 7 gives us a little bit more detail. It's 2 of every animal, but 7 of the clean animals. So they brought some extra clean animals along with them for a very specific reason we'll look at in just a moment. But not only did they go into the ark with the animals and everything like that, we want to also keep in mind the context. This is 120 years after Noah was first told about the flood. Remember, in chapter 6, it says that God was going to strive with man for 120 years when he told Noah to start building the ark. It took Noah that long. And while Noah is building the ark, and the Bible says in Hebrews that he was a preacher of righteousness, so he's preaching, he's pleading with the people, God's striving with man for 120 years. And 7 days before the flood, Noah's still the only righteous one, still the only one listening to God, which is crazy. So 7 days before the rain begins, they enter the ark with the animals. The flood then happens 7 days later, and it's a result of 2 events converging. Now, many people think the flood just started raining because it had never rained before. That's what the Bible tells us. It had never rained before. It's the first time people have seen rain, and people think it just started raining, and that's kind of what caused the flood. But there were actually 2 events that it tells us in this chapter. First, the fountains of the deep open up and burst forth water from the ground. So the fountains of the deep burst forth water from the ground. That's the first thing that happens, and then it begins to rain. So the flood is a result of water from above and below converging into this great worldwide flood. So it was a huge event. I mean, imagine what that would have looked like. You've never seen rain before, water's bursting up from the ground. It would be complete chaos, and it absolutely was, which matches the chaos of the evilness that we saw in the last chapter. We also see that in this passage that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, that doesn't mean that they were on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights. They were on the ark much, much longer. We'll see that in just a minute. Just think, though, if it's raining and there's a great flood, it's not just going to immediately go away as soon as it stops raining. And that's why they were on the ark much longer. And the entire earth was covered by the flood. This is not a localized flood. There's many reasons for that. You can kind of study that out on your own, but it wasn't a localized flood. This was a global flood. The entire earth is covered with water. And he kills every living thing on the planet except what was saved by the ark. So 5 key takeaways from this chapter. Number 1, God is the one who shut the door of the ark. He was in control of the door or the path to salvation. It's a very important point that tells us something about God. God was the one who was in control of the path to salvation. When Noah entered the ark with his family, God came behind them and shut the door. That's very, very important. Noah didn't go shut the door. Noah didn't control the door. God did. And when God closed the door, it was over. But God was the one in control of people coming and going out of that door. Very, very important principle that we'll see later on. But I'm just going to lay the framework for that now. God was in control of that path to salvation. Number 2, God provided food for Noah and his family, as well as the ability to sacrifice with the clean animals. So the reason they brought 7 clean animals instead of just 2, they needed 2 to repopulate the earth after the flood. But they needed additional for that time period while they were on the ark to eat. They stored grain. I'm sure they stored all kinds of different other non-meat foods as well, but they needed meat, and the meat came from the clean animals. Now, this is before the law of Moses, so this is before clean and unclean animals was actually defined in the law, but God clearly revealed to Noah what would be clean, healthy, good things to eat to sustain them. Plus, there were certain animals that God accepted for sacrifice, lambs and different types of animals that God accepted for sacrifice. So these clean animals would be sacrificed to God and eaten as well. It would provide food and sacrifice. Number 3, God said, "Come into the ark," when he was talking to Noah, implying that he was on the ark. If God was not on the ark, he would say, "Go into the ark." Think about position. If I'm outside and I want somebody who's inside to come outside, I'll say, "Come outside." But if I'm inside and I look at someone else and I want them to go outside, I'm going to say, "Go outside," right? It's a positional term, a positional language. And God is saying, "Come into the ark," as if God himself is on the ark. Now, I'm not saying that God physically was on the ark, but what I am saying is that God was promising his presence would be on the ark with Noah and his family, that he was with them on the ark, which is very important. Number 4, the waters of the flood rose about 20 feet higher or taller than the tallest peaks on earth. So think of the tallest mountain, about 20 feet higher than that is how high this flood went, according to this passage. That's massive, global, worldwide flood. And also, it says the waters did not recede for 150 days. So even though it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, the waters didn't even begin to recede for 150 days. And it wasn't even until longer than that it was receded enough for them to actually get off the ark. And we'll see that in the following chapter. So 5 things this tells us about God. Number 1, he's present with us. Remember, God said, "Come onto the ark." God was with Noah and his family on the ark. So God is present with us in the greatest chaos around us. When chaos is all around us, God is with us. So important to understand this about God, that he's not a God that's distant. He's not a God that's far off. He is a God that is with you. Always keep that in mind. 2, he's in control. God was the one who shut the door of the ark. God was the one who burst forth the water from the ground and sent the rain. God is in control. Things may look chaotic. Things may look crazy. There may be everything going on around you, but God is with you and he is in control. Number 3, he is the provider. God provided the food for God provided the food for Noah on the ark. God provided it. He sent the animals to Noah. 7 of all the clean animals. Let's go on the ark. He provided the food. Very important. God also provides the sacrifices, the 4th thing. Very important principle. We're pointing to Jesus, right? God provided the sacrifice. In this case, Noah didn't have to go gather animals for sacrifice. God sent the animals to Noah and they went on the ark. God provided a sacrifice. And number 5, God reveals his plans. God revealed his plans to Noah. And he said, in 7 days, the rain's going to fall. In 7 days, the flood is coming. To those who are willing to listen, to the friends of God, to the people that listen and are righteous, God reveals his plans. So important. 5 things we learned about God. I pray that you take this, go read this chapter, seek God, dig deeper. I'll see you in the next chapter.